Welcome back to another podcast for Global Perspectives. Um, Today I'm joined by my good friend from the UK out of Manchester, England, Imad. Um, yeah, Imad, thanks for coming on. So I would like to start off by going back to the beginning, just talking about how we first met, which was actually a really a just a moment of chance as well as a weird coincidence. Um, we were playing Xbox Live. I forget what year did we meet? Was it 2011, 2012?
12. It was definitely 12.
2012, yeah. And I was trying to increase my rank on a game called Halo Wars. And for those who don't know, Halo Wars is a game where it is a strategy game, almost like chess, except you are controlling armies. Basically, you have a bird's eye view of a battlefield. You have resources. You have to control, how what you build, what you put your research to, and you basically battle out with another army until one person loses. Um, I was put into a game, a random game 2v2, and this guy decides to invite me to an Xbox Live party. And normally I don't accept invites from strangers to talk to them, but I
But
figured,
you did
hey,
this time.
I did, yes, with you, and it was you that was inviting me, and you were ranked general, and I was not a high rank at that time. I thought, why not? I could join and just talk to this guy, but that'll be it, and then we'll win this game, then we'll go our separate ways. But that never happened.
Exactly.
um, do you normally send invites to talk to random strangers over the internet, Emma? Did your parents ever teach you not
No,
to speak to random to
no,
strangers?
not exactly, but it's just one time. Obviously, playing online, and you're playing with random people, and if you're constantly losing, you think it's better to talk to the your team player. That's the only reason I sent that invite. One time.
Yeah, and I remember the first thing I said to you was, "You have a British accent," and you said to me, "No, I don't have an accent. You do." And that's what started off this whole friendship thing. So it's just a weird coincidence that that happened, and now we're still talking.
And we've been over to see each other as well.
Yeah, we saw each other, but we'll get to that here. But it was interesting because I think our friendship had a bit of a unique twist on it because we were in two different worlds, two different countries. I remember when we started talking more and playing with each other a lot more on Xbox, and eventually it became Skype conversations, and then it became studies, where we were helping each other with homework and things like that. So it really did evolve. Uh,
It wasn't just gaming, was it?
yeah, it was at the beginning just gaming, like, hey, let's get on, let's play, and let's have some fun. But then afterwards, it became. I mean, I think that was what kept our friendship going was just the curiosity about each other's worlds, each other's lives. Because I,
Yeah,
I remember like you told me that you got an A star, on one of your uh in one of your classes, and I said, well, what the heck is an A star, right? Because I never heard of that before, and you were telling me how like it's like above an A, and I said, oh, it's like an A plus kind of thing,
yeah.
and I remember talking about your schooling system, and something that I think that I want to at least mention is the unique experience about having a friend like you 8 hours apart, and is that
I got to show you the school, the college at the time, didn't I?
yeah, and it was the same for me because I was in high school because we're pretty much the same age, 8 months apart, I think, but um the thing was that I would be staying up late doing homework, and you'd just be getting up going to school, and so you would Skype me, and you would put your phone in your pocket, and you would show me what the college was like. And then by the time you got home and I was going to school, I did the same thing where I put my phone in my pocket and Skyped you, and you actually sat in one of my history classes, and I thought that was a bit of a unique experience for just not you, but also for me. I got to see your world, you got to see my world, and just
I think
the day to day. Like I've never been to the UK before, but I kind of was getting the feel that I was in the UK just seeing it through your eyes. I'm not sure. Did you feel the same way?
yeah, exactly. It was sort of what you see. Those movies where you see off American high schools and you see what they're like. You get the actual first person view, with you.
Yeah.
So you get to the sort of, even though you're not there, you get to sort of experience it and think, okay, so this is what it's actually kind of like. Which I really did think was cool at the time, and still sort of is.
Yeah, and I still look back on it and I thought to myself, wow, because for me, my stereotypical British school was, obviously there's not much British television in America here, but was Harry Potter, right? Like, like everyone had, the fancy clothes, the tie and everything. And so for me, it was just really unique just to peer into your world a little bit. Um, and I remember also one time, because now one thing about Imad everyone should know, and one thing about me everyone should know is we both love history. We talk about history every chance that we can get. We always try and talk, like World War II, Vietnam, British history and so forth. Um, and I found it really interesting that Imad, when he was sitting in one of the history classes that I was a teacher assistant for, um, my history teacher, Mr. Lindblad, he asked the class, when was the Civil War? And
Oh yeah,
we had answers from the 1700s to the 1900s, and Imad, he's
I
in
shouted
the
out.
you shouted out, but you were in my headphones at the time on the laptop, so no one could hear you. And then I unplugged the headset and I said, Imad, say that again. And you said the exact year, which was.
Do I still remember it? Was it 1861 to 65? Was it 62 to 65? It's been a while.
It's been a
It's
while,
been a
yeah.
while.
But
Yeah.
I just remember that my history teacher looks at the computer and he says, "That's the British Yank listening on your classes," and he got that answer correct, and he's not even American. And I just thought how funny that was that you knew our history better than some of
I think
us
the only
who live
reason
here.
I knew that was because we studied the American West in my last year of high school, even though it's not necessarily the Civil War. So I thought, oh, this is still fresh in my head.
Yeah, but I just thought it was funny because my history teacher always said, that it's important to know our own history, and people who are outside of, who are foreigners, or from overseas, who know your history better than you do. It's a little bit disheartening and a little bit sad that you don't know your own history. So I thought that was really funny. And I remember something in that too that was pretty cool was um, I remember I was trying to learn how to tie a tie for
Oh,
and I
when
remember
you're
and I remember the first person I thought of was you to teach me how to tie a tie. My dad was at work or something, and I remember I called you and said, "Hey man, how do you tie a tie?" Because you tied a tie every day of your life when
every
you
day
went
for
to
high school,
school.
yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was just so funny. That this friendship went from just simple gaming to schooling to actually helping each other. Um, and I thought that was really really cool. And I remember like for example, Imad, you were applying to jobs, and I
You
helped you
helped me with
write
my
your
CV.
and I helped you write your CV or your resume, and instantly after that you got a
It
job.
worked. It worked perfectly.
Yeah, it worked. So yeah, it's interesting to see how far along we've come. And I remember another thing too was when I was at uni or at college. Um, you helped me on one of my papers because I was studying. There was a literature course that I
What
took,
was it on again?
and it was Marxist criticism through the eyes of these books that we were reading, mostly detective fiction and the revenge genre. And I remember like I knew the almost the bare minimum, the basics of Marxism. Um, and Imad, who you studied sociology a lot, you sat on my computer on Skype while I was in the library, and we hashed it
Doing
out
that
over
paper.
I think about 4 days straight, and I finally got it. And that paper was actually one of the best papers I've ever written. And my college professor was like, "This was a flat out great paper. Like like you understood this and you grasped this concept so well in a short period of time." And I said,
Was
"Well,
that
I had help."
your
So
was that by any chance your sociology when you took sociology as your one of your classes?
no, that was my literature professor. Sociology, that course was not sociology. It
Sociology.
was it was just talking about world events and getting off on tangents and things like that. But
Oh,
um,
it,
yeah,
it
so,
was it was great seeing university and college though from your perspective compared to mine, because if you look at it, yours is different classes. You know, your major and minor in different subjects,
mhm,
whereas over here you don't have that. It's just you choose one subject for 3 years and that's it. So I liked how you had that more diversity of choice.
yeah, Yeah, I thought that
So
was that I thought that was interesting for you as well, as that when you went to college and you were telling me all the courses that you were taking, and they were very, very focused. It was not like that diverse thing. Because I remember, there were a few classes that I took, and you asked me why do you need to take those courses, and it's just that it was the requirement of the university for me to take those courses, versus with you, it was a little bit more uh,
they want you to specifically focus on that only subject
yeah, and
and like nothing else.
in a way kind of specialize in it. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so it was very, very yeah, it was a very, very narrow and very concrete path where you didn't have the liberty of taking those other courses that you'd like.
I,
Um,
I feel in a sense it might be because our obviously we have college which is different to your college
mhm,
before our university. It's because we do 2 years there, so that's where you have the opportunity to go choose, you like spread out, choose different subjects before you get to university and
mhm.
specialize. If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and for those who don't know, was Imad and I are roughly 8 years, or 8 months apart, but um, when I was 16, I think that's when around the time that we met, um, that he had already graduated high school, and then he moved on to college for 2 years, and then university for 2 years. Now, I guess Imad, just to kind of, I guess we could start on that subject here. Give us the information on how the schooling system works over there in the UK, more so, and how you grew up in it.
Sure, I'll start from ideally. Do you want me to start from high school or before?
Whichever one, like
I'd say
give
from
them the whole picture. Start from.
I'd start from high school because that's where I best remember it from. So over here you have years, so year 7 to 11. You don't really have grades or anything like that, and you start at the age of 11 and finish high school at 16. So it's 5 years, normally 5 years. Then after that, you go to something called college, or in other instances, something called sixth form for 2 years, where you can choose a variety of subjects such as sociology, psychology, and you can choose up to four of these subjects, and you have to pass these four or minimum three to get into university. So by the time you're done with college, you're 18, similar, to the US. But the only difference is when you start university, you only stay for 3 years. Courses are generally 3 years, so you finish at the age of 21 instead of 22, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Versus here in the American schooling system, you have preschool at the age of 4, perhaps, and then primary school is what you guys would call it. So K through 5, middle school or junior high, which is grades 6 through 8, or from ages 11 to 13, and high school is from 14 to 18, which is grades 9 through 12. And then after that, you go into college at the age of 18, should you choose to. When college and university is almost interchangeable here, versus over there, it seems to be a very distinct difference
Separate.
between college and university. Um,
Yeah, they're not necessarily interchangeable.
yeah. Now there's community colleges here, which some people do, where they complete community college in 2 years and they transfer to a university. But generally speaking, the word college is used interchangeably with university, so which I find really interesting.
Aren't
Um, Go ahead.
your university, your process to apply to university is different? Don't you have to apply to each university individually?
Yeah, they have tried to find ways to streamline it to where it's a little bit more simple. Like there's something over here, at least in when I was applying to universities, there's something called the Common App, where you fill out one application, but you actually apply to 30 schools or something like that.
Uh,
Or you pick all the schools on that list that that application would fit in. But most schools, yes, you do have to apply individually, and you have to pay an application fee for each one of those schools. Um, so, for me, I applied to University of Oregon, Oregon State, University of Washington, Stanford, University of Pennsylvania, um, Drexel University, Temple University, um, and yeah, and all of those cost money. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
and then I had the Common App, which helped apply to other schools like Seattle Pacific and so forth. But Yeah, the University of Oregon was the one that gave me the most money in the end. Um, Segueing into that, let's talk about money and cost of education over there. Because I remember when I told you about my cost of education, like when you even came over here, Imad, I took you to the bookstore and you were appalled and taken aback by how much those
The
textbooks
price.
cost. Yeah, like you and I literally sat there and you were flipping through the textbooks and you were wondering why did this sociology textbook cost $150? Yeah, talk to us about that. What's the cost of education like over there? At least
From what
with
you,
college and universities.
well, I feel like the main difference is whereas at the end of start of every semester, I remember you telling me you'd have a teacher telling you to to get these textbooks or you'd need them, for the class.
Hmm.
The difference over here is a teacher or a professor or a doctor would never say you have to buy these because all the materials are put up, and even if you do need a book, it's normally optional. It's just to help if you want it. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily needed. But segueing away from that, I'd say the main difference is when you start a university over here, no one ever tends to think of, like the cost or I can't go to that university because of this. Do you know the cost of it or the price? I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yeah, over here, a lot of times it is dictated by factors, financial factors. Like for example, out of state versus in-state tuition. And there is that because every state you pay taxes to. And if you are an out-of-state, uh, you know, student, then you have not paid taxes in that state, hence they're going to charge you more money. And the cost of living expenses as well, but yeah, a lot of times it is tuition and how much it actually costs to attend the school. Um, and obviously, how much debt do you want to go into? Like, did you want to go to a private school versus a state school, or a public university? Because the private schools, even though if you're in state, will charge you almost on par with the out-of-state tuition fees a lot of the times. Like I remember another school that I looked at, but I shied away from because of the costs was George Fox University. To give you, I think, some numbers here, I believe at the time the tuition was going to cost me $40,000. Um,
Yeah.
ver- no, not per year, but it would be total. Um, versus if I attended the University of Oregon, it was going to be, I think, $20,000 total. I believe that's how much it was. Now, mind you, if I were to attend, a university in California, they would probably charge me upwards to $40,000 for tuition as well. So you could see there, George Fox being a private in-state school, um, was charging me on equivalent to me going out of state. So unless I had the money for it, I was not going to go to a private school. um, but yeah, what about you? How much money did you have to pay for in British
Well,
pounds? We don't have to worry about the conversion. We could just talk about British pounds if it's easier.
you still have to pay, but the issue is it's £9,000 a year. Some schools you can go to it's 6,000, but the only difference is, say, after your 3 years of doing a course, you never have to worry about paying it back until you earn about £25,000, and even then, it's a small percentage. Do you know, like of your wage? Say it's like 10% of your yearly wage, and then after, I think if I'm correct, 30 years, the government will just pay it off, so you're not in debt. And I feel like the big difference compared to, if I remember correctly, what you were saying is, isn't it after 6 months your university starts taking fees back or wants you to start paying it back?
There is a grace period. I don't remember when or how long that grace period is anymore. It's been a while since I've um, had to pay back my student loans. Not because of COVID, but during COVID, all student loan paybacks have been postponed. But I paid off my student loans as quickly as I could after I left college. But yeah, there is a grace period, and then they start collecting or start,
Collecting it.
yeah, requiring you to pay it back. Now, it may not even be the university. It could be those loan companies that you have applied and gotten the loans through. And if you don't pay it back, well, either your co-signer, meaning someone who signed and will guarantee the debt be paid back, will pay it back,
They have to pay it.
or you will, or your credit will get affected. Now, I recall you saying him at one time that if you don't pay back your student loans or, the cost of your education, it doesn't affect your credit, does it?
No, it thing is, what happens is you can never have a job and never have to pay any of it back, and it
Hmm.
doesn't affect your credit either because I can't remember why, but they came because otherwise you wouldn't be able to buy anything after, would you? So they thought it'd probably be a bad idea. But yeah, it's never affected anyone's credit. Otherwise, I feel like I wouldn't have gone to university or anyone I know.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's always something that I found was appalling between, just us talking. Um, I remember another one that we talked about was just, just I remember that you guys got student accommodation, or in this case, student housing. My first year in the dorms cost me $13,000, and you were shocked by how much money I was spending just to live
That is
there
a lot.
on the first year. Yeah. Um, yeah, I just recalled that, and but I think though it was a good experience. Definitely cost a lot of money for that experience, but a lot of my friends that I met that are lifelong friends from college have been from the dorms. So, like
Wasn't
go ahead.
wasn't student accommodation more expensive than private?
No, it was more, at least when I went to the University of Oregon, the dorms that I stayed in was more expensive than the tuition per year, um, which was unreal. Um, So yeah, I don't know how that works, but that's what happened with on-campus housing. Is you paid a lot more money, at least at the University of Oregon, than you did um, tuition. Though I think that it's starting to somewhat change a little bit, because obviously in the U.S. here, price of tuition has increased, and the University of Oregon, at least the last time I checked, they were requiring all first-year students, freshmen, to stay in the dorms.
Is
Um,
that a requirement or do they have a choice?
I think they're trying to make it a requirement, though I think some students can try to appeal to stay off campus. But yeah, last time I checked, I think they are making that a requirement. So um, yeah. But man, Imad, I just thinking about school as well. Something that also just came to mind was I remember when we were in high school, we tried to get like some student foreign exchange so
Oh
you could
yeah.
come, yeah, so you could come over, and that never fell through. No
It just
matter
it
which
didn't work.
Yeah, no matter which foreign exchange program we went to, there was none that came to Gresham High School or no.
It was
And
it was it was always like New York or somewhere in California or Texas. It was never Portland, Oregon, was it?
yeah, it was never Portland, Oregon, which was a little bit a little bit
Disappointing.
yeah, disappointing. And we tried to do the same in college, but I think just time-wise, we just didn't have enough time for that. Um, and then I remember, I think it was it was 2018 January. I called you up and I said, "Hey, Imad, could I come over this summer?" And you said, "Sure." And then you asked your parents, and then made it
They were
happen.
fine with it
And it was hard to believe, but we've known each other for 6 years, and we finally met each other for the first time in person after 6 years.
in the
Um,
summer, wasn't it?
yeah, it
Was
was in the
it
summer.
July? It
It
was
was
July, wasn't it?
it was June. A little bit towards the later end of June and early July was when I was there in the UK. Um, yeah, I
Feels like a
still
lifetime ago.
it was, yeah, especially with COVID that has happened since then. But yeah, I remember I went over there and we greeted each other, and the first thing I said to you was, "Thank God you're not a catfish."
Oh god.
That would have been the worst experience to find out that you were someone else. So
I,
just
I had
pretending to
to
be you.
I had to bring Harley with me that day because I'd only just passed my driving test, so
Yeah.
I wasn't confident driving to the airport myself.
I also remember that I was also shocked by just sitting in the car with you because one, it felt surreal that I'm actually, in person there with you. We're finally, hanging out in person rather than just hearing each other's voices over, a speaker
The
or
Xbox.
headset. But also because you guys drive on the wrong side of the road. No, I'm kidding. But uh, yeah, but I thought that was it was a nice culture shock seeing something different like
How
that because I've
how was
never
the
seen it in
flight over
person.
though?
What was that?
How was the flight over? Like, were you nervous before
Oh, I
you
was
set out?
shaking. I was shaking and I was excited too, but I was, lack of a better word, a little bit scared because I've never done something like this before. It's like, um, I met you, I've known you, and it got to the point, and I'm gonna tell this to people is, um, you know how when we talk, you have a, I acknowledge that you have a British accent. You tell me that I have an American accent, but that is no longer the case. You just sound like Imad. Like you don't have a British accent to me anymore. Um,
Yeah, I know what you. I completely understand what you mean.
yeah,
It's sort of like when you introduced me to Ramina and any other friends. They sounded American as hell, but then when I talk to you, I don't hear that anymore. If that makes sense.
yeah, I don't hear it anymore either, and I think it's kind of funny because it's like that's how used to I've gotten to hearing your voice, and I'm like, you know. But then if all of a sudden if I hear James Corden or Gordon Ramsay, I'm like, oh yeah, he's from he's from the UK, or hey, he's English, or hey, he's Scottish, and so, um, Gordon is actually Scottish for people who don't know. By the way, he's not
Yeah,
English, he's Scottish. Um,
even though he sounds it.
yeah, and actually something, Imad, for people to know that they probably didn't know is the UK is itself made up of four countries. I remember I told people that and they were just shocked. They're like, "No, the UK is a
It's
country."
one. Yeah, I feel like if you're not from, to be honest, some people over here are surprised with that themselves because I don't think they've like open a book or looked at the country. But for the vast majority of foreigners, I feel like they think just hear the United Kingdom and think, do you know England or the whole thing's England, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or Britain.
Yeah, they kind of get confused, which is understandable. Don't get me wrong, because if all you hear is England and the UK, you tend to think it's all the same thing, which I can't blame people at first, but obviously later in life it's a bit different. I think. I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, yeah, I never knew only because, I've always seen, the UK or Great Britain and England, and I remember the day that you told me I was doing a current events project in high school, and you said it's four countries, and you said it was
Oh,
Wales, England, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. That's what makes up Great Britain
was
or
that
the
the
UK.
was that the one when you tried to ask your teacher if I could talk in it? This was in high school, wasn't it?
Yes, and
I
I, I,
remember
w-
that. I
I
think I
went to
remember
my
that.
I went to my senior year high school teacher who taught history, and I said, "Hey, we're doing a current events project, and I have Europe to present on. Can I bring in my friend from the UK? Because at the time the UK was part of the European Union, and had a really heavy uh, hand in European affairs and politics, and so I thought that was an interesting uh, thing to do, and but she said no. It's best if you present it, so because it's for your education, and he'll just steal the show is what it was, and I think that would be true because
I guess it's fair.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, but I thought that was just funny that that I had like, oh, hey, I can ask Imad for help. He knows what's going on over there. He watches the news all the time. He's
Too much news.
yeah, but you are basically right there. Like you're getting the first-hand news, and then you're just telling me about it. And in a lot of ways, what I think is interesting is, as an American, I didn't realize it at the time, but how much the world looks at the U.S. because you were keeping tabs on political, news and things like that was happening in the U.S. that I even wasn't aware of or wasn't even following up on.
It's
And these were important stuff. And so I thought, and that's what, in a way, kind of helped me get there because I'm like, wow, Imad is. He understands more about what's going on in the U.S. than I am right now. I should
I
probably
feel like
do that.
I feel like that's due to a major difference in the news that's reported. Like, remember when I visited you and I was watching the news? I think with your dad, it just shows like regional issues. Do you do you like the whole country or further abroad? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas over here, they tend to report regional as well as all around the world.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I think that that's what's also interesting is that you have that perspective, where you're seeing what's going on around the world versus over here, we might like every night those news channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS News, but they report mostly on American, news stories and politics. They don't ever, unless of course there's a story that sticks out, from another country,
Brexit.
then yeah, like Brexit, then they'll talk about it. Um, or the few times that we get a lot more is news from the UK is about, oh, Meghan and Prince Harry is leaving,
Yeah, like the
like
tabloid sort of stuff they put in
yeah,
newspapers, all the big stuff.
we don't have like, oh, hey, it is like I remember what was also very interesting was back in 2014, right after I graduated high school, um, I was in college, my second year in college in 2014. I remember that I told you, Imad, like about how it was the 100-year anniversary of the start of World War One, and my history teacher was like, "You should probably ask him to go to those museums because there's like it's gonna they would bring that stuff back out because for the 100-year anniversary." And and I remember that I watched a National Geographic a documentary on that. And I guess yeah, maybe that's the only way that I feel that I can find out more information about those types of things versus just from the normal news because that's I feel like that's my only way of seeing the other side of the world or going out of my way and researching on my own. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's not covered in the mainstream media here in the United States. So um,
I guess it's sort of understandable because if you look at it this way, the country's so big. It's bigger than well, I feel like most Europeans as well. So most people from the UK, they don't tend to realize how big the US is. Like when I flew over, I landed what it was like a 7 hour flight to Atlanta, then another 5 hours to Portland. You forget how big it is, so you can't necessarily report, on everything or show everything that's going on around the world, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, that makes sense. Speaking of which, I remember, Imad, when you were over there when I came over there to visit you in 2018, and you said that it was going to be a long drive down to London. Now, keep in mind, the we were only in England, and Manchester is somewhat near the northern part of England, and London is a little bit more to the southeast.
So,
Yeah, a long drive was 2 hours.
well, because when we drove to Liverpool, I'd consider that a medium drive, which was almost 2 hours. London was 4, 5, I'd
I
say
think it was
four
two
to
or
five.
three, I think.
I think it was long because we went by coach, didn't we? So
Yeah.
it took a bit longer, but yeah, that'd be considered a long drive. Like if you drove from, say, somewhere in Scotland, from Edinburgh to Manchester or London, that'd be considered extremely long. And that's, if you put it into perspective, that the UK is the same size as Oregon, really. So it's like from one side to the
Not the
other.
UK. I think more so England than the UK, because Scotland's
Really,
pretty big. But
but it just puts everything into perspective. Like you can't go driving around the US. That's why it's just impossible, and everyone flies, I guess.
yeah, yeah, a lot of people fly over here. Though you can do road trips, they will take a while. But versus over in England, you can go from one coast to coast, in basically a day. One side of the country, if you will, because England is a country. From apart from the greater whole UK. So I just thought it was really interesting, yeah, that you were saying that how in I remember as well when you first landed, you were saying like everything is so big here, and I'm like, well,
It,
yeah, everything is
that's what.
supposed to be big here.
But remember when you came over here? You remember the roads, cars having to park on part of the pavement.
Yeah, cars were parking on the sidewalks, and to us over here that can be a problem, and you can get tickets for it, but over there not so much.
It's
I
it's
also
common because the roads aren't big enough.
yeah, I also remember how I said how over in the UK everything is taller because it's like, oh, you have double decker buses, because buses are 2 floors rather than because over here there's never been a double decker bus. Maybe in New York for tourist buses, but there's never really been like a double decker bus that's been used to transport people. Just
People.
yeah, like from for day to day type stuff. Yeah, or your house, which is 3 floors up, because like
Upwards.
obviously yeah, there's no way to room to build sideways anymore. So what do? You build
Just
up,
takes
right?
up more
So
space.
yeah.
That's it's I tend you'll tend to find that with the newer houses. If you got a house from 60 to 70 years ago, they'd be wide like yours, Paul, but not as wide because they still couldn't have made it, too big lengthways.
hmm
Otherwise, it'd still be taking up too much space, which is a shame. So most people tend to buy houses in the countryside, when they have all the space that they want,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, One thing that I also remember seeing over there in the UK is compared to at least over here in Oregon, all the houses are made of brick, not wood. And I remember when you said, Imad, what if there's a fire? And I said, well, if there's a fire, there's a fire. So
That's it's a genuine question I had. It's like, what happens if there's a fire? Because I over here the rule is obviously you normally have fire doors. So if your room sets on fire, you shut the door, and ideally the fire service gets there and puts it out, before it spreads.
mhm.
But then I thought to myself, if the house is made out of wood, does it just spread?
It just spreads. It just spreads.
That's because I really thought because of it, then it just means you've lost a room instead of the house.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's like because like you've seen those wildfires. What happens after the wildfire when those homes are all destroyed? Like literally, there's
Yeah,
nothing left.
burnt to
So,
the ground. I guess
um,
it's more because of the climate, maybe because you guys actually get like 30-degree summers.
30 degrees
Uh,
Celsius for people who don't know, the British actually use the metric system and the international system.
we use a bit of both. Like we'll use miles per hour still, whereas the rest of Europe still uses kilometers. We've messed it up a little bit,
Yeah, you
but
messed up the world a little bit, Imad. I'll be honest. You British people messed up the world a little bit. I remember, Imad, before just to kind of get off topic just a little bit. I thought this was a funny story. Is I remember when your baby brother Noah was born, and I said, "How much does he
oh
weigh?" And you said, "What, like 2 pounds or something like that?" And
yeah,
the,
something
and
like three. So I
Yeah,
can't. Yeah,
and when you said pounds, I'm like, pounds? Is that how much he's worth? Because in my head, I know I'm talking with Imad. I'm instantly thinking British pound sterling. Like that's like the cost, right? And I'm like, and I literally say to him, what is that? His price for if you chose to sell him is 2 pounds? He goes, no, that's how much he weighs.
what do you guys measure babies in then?
We measure babies in pounds.
God, 'cause I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
pounds and ounces, right? But over there in the UK, I would have expected you guys to use grams and kilograms. So,
We sort of do because I'm pretty sure we do because obviously I used to work in a bakery and we'd measure all the products into like kilograms and grams. So I think it's interchangeable at certain times, which doesn't help so much.
mhm, mhm.
It's what shocked me the most in the US was your filling off. When you filled up fuel, petrol in your cars? I could never figure out how it worked because you use gallons, instead of liters. So it always baffled my mind when you went to fill up your car. I was like, how much are you actually filling in?
And that's another thing too. We say gas stations, you guys say petrol stations.
Technically, isn't both correct because it's gasoline as well as petroleum?
I guess that's true, but do you guys use gasoline or do you guys only use petroleum?
Petroleum because it's you got when you go to fill up, you have two types of petroleum and obviously diesel.
Mhm.
That's what it'll say on the pump anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, but I just found that really really funny that that you guys were using both the metric and the English system, even though you guys were the ones that invented the English system, then pretty much stopped using it. So,
It's
uh,
yeah, I think we just couldn't completely get rid of it, so we thought we'd keep half of it, which
yeah,
is
but I do like the metric system because it is powers of 10. It is a lot easier than a fourth, a quarter, and ounces and things like that. It's I guess for people who do use it regularly, it's easy, but for me being coming
it'll take getting used to, wouldn't it? That's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, but for me coming from the sciences, I mostly use the metric system, but there are a few things I will always use the English system for, like miles per hour and pounds. Like I will never ever say, oh, kilometers. That to me that's a little bit more
Yeah,
confusing. So,
I can't use kilometers either. It doesn't compute in my head. Like that's a kilometer
yeah.
or that's 2 kilometers. So I'll always stick to miles per hour. I think in regards to different ways of measuring things, one thing that completely confuses me is obviously we were talking about before measuring the obviously weather, like Fahrenheit and degrees. I,
Yeah.
c- I could never get how was it? Is 30 degrees 0 degrees Celsius?
32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees Celsius.
I could understand obviously 100. Obviously the hot the further up you go, the hotter it is. So I was like, oh, 100 must be warm. But then when it gets to like 50, 60, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure where we are.
Yeah, I have to mentally sometimes convert because when Imad says it's very hot, it's about 2 or 3 degrees right now, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's cold. That's very cold. But
Yeah,
it's
it's
it's so
it's still above zero. It's still above minus, so it's not too bad.
but let's circle back to the initial one was that houses were made of brick, and you said that it has to do with the climate, and yeah, and something that people also I think tend to forget too is how higher up in latitude the UK is. When I was
Like
there for the summer, the sun was rising at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning,
early, it was
very
rising.
early. Yeah. So, but then trade-off is that when it's late at night, or when it's wintertime, it sets
Sets
really
really
early.
by like 3 o'clock, half three. It's already setting or pretty much set at the earliest, which is great during the summer, but during the winter you don't ideally want it to be like that. But going back to the idea of houses to be made out of brick, because the weather might not be cold, it just tends to it rains, but spread periodically. You could say it's gloomy. That's summer you came over, like I was telling you before. It's a one-off. It was really warm that summer,
Hmm.
like really warm.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. I came over and it was really, really hot, and I was the only one that was used to it.
It
So,
was what was the hottest? 28 degrees, I think. 28,
I
29.
think somewhere around there, yeah, 2029. So yeah, I remember
So
that because you tell me all the time it rains a lot over there, and then when I come over, it's this nice sunny weather, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And mind you, it was also very sunny and warm, in at least in Oregon, at least in Portland, when I came over, and you and Harley kept saying Paul brought the weather with him. Thank God.
it was a great summer. That just the heat. It was ideal, especially after. I just finished university. I think I just graduated from university as well, so it was
Yeah,
even better.
yeah,
It was
you had just graduated. Yeah, one thing that I remember you telling me that I thought was interesting as well is over here in at least in the U.S. We have school, then we have like a big summer break and a 2 or 3 week winter break. You guys don't
yeah.
have that. You guys don't have that chunk of summer where it's no school.
It's a long because don't you almost have 3 months of summer? Isn't it about that?
Yes, June, July, and August for uh, primary education, and then and secondary, and then in if you were in college or university, some schools start in August and end in May, and some schools start late September, early October, and end in June. So yeah, you do have that 3 month segment off of school, which is summer. So
That does sound nice, but I think over here what they've done is they've split it up, so you'll still have a summer similar to you guys, but it's only 6 weeks,
hmm
and then you have something called half term, which is a week, normally in October. Then obviously everyone has Christmas, for 2 weeks,
yeah,
and then it's like another week, then 2 weeks off for Easter, then another week, then you get the summer for six. I think they break it up so you don't get burnt out, throughout the year.
yeah. And I think that's something that we have trouble with. It's like, gotta go. I got another 6 months of school straight before I get, yeah,
Get a break,
you get a break or
get any time
something.
to yourself.
Yeah. But I think in a way as well is that when you take that much time off during the summertime, you forget a lot of the stuff unless you're actively reviewing it. So
Yeah,
a lot of times when schools resume, especially in high school and middle school, you're just refreshing what you were already supposed to know. Versus, I don't think you guys have that problem because you guys are taking that big break that we would have had in smaller bits. So you guys are always, on the game with that. So I found that to be very interesting, the way that your guys' schooling system works like that, and
I
how
just
many breaks you guys have.
don't get me wrong, it's great, but I feel like the problem, well, from my experience in school, is say the summer holidays are approaching. And say it's like the last 2 weeks of school. Your teachers, not necessarily because they want to, but maybe there's no work left to do. They take it easy on you, so you might start watching do like films or stuff, like the last week before you finish or the last two.
Mhm.
So they make it a lot easier on you, which I think is great. But at the same time, they shouldn't really do it at the same time because then it'd be great to use that for learning rather than just taking it easy. Obviously, at the time, being in high school or primary school, you think it's great, don't you? But
Yeah.
looking back at it as an adult, you think I could use that for more education.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and I just am having this conversation with you, I'm just reminded by how different our worlds are, and and still to this day how much I'm shocked by by that, because for me, I've always grown up with this system, this education system where you go to school September, October, November, December. You have 2 weeks off in December, and then you go to school until spring. Then you have 1 or 2 weeks off for spring break, and then you have this massive summer break. Um, and
Uh,
over there, you were going to school constantly, so
just on
uh,
all the time. But it feels great though when you get a break. It's like, yes, I've got a week off now.
yeah.
But even because you guys, the only week you get is spring break, isn't it?
We get spring break, and then we get 2 weeks on winter break because the winter holidays. You have Christmas, and
Yeah.
then you also have the New Year, so they give you 2 weeks there, and then they usually give you 1 week off for spring break, and then um, and then you go to school between April and June, and then that's the last leg before summer break. So
I think my first time I saw what an American summer was like, or do you like the idea of how long it was from I was still in primary school, so I was probably like 10 or something. You know,
hmm
from watching it sounds really sad now at the moment, but doing watching High School Musical, you're just realizing how long it is. I was like, damn, they get long summer. It looks absolutely great. I was like, American high school looks amazing. Looking back on it.
a question I have for you, Imad, is before you met me, or before we really started to get to know each other a lot more in terms of seeing into each other's lives, um, and just seeing how different it is. The only time you actually got a feel for what America is like was through film, right? In Hollywood and TV and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
nothing else. There was because obviously I'd never been before. I'd been to a couple of other countries in Europe as well as Pakistan, but I'd never been to the US. And all you see is obviously those American, Hollywood films.
hmm
That's all you'd get. And I honestly, before I met you, I don't think I would have ever gone to the US.
Or more so gone to Oregon too, because I know when a lot
Yeah,
of tourists come here, like who wants to go to on holiday to Portland, Oregon, right?
they,
So
saying that when I was flying to visit you, the two people next to me, I think, were from Philadelphia. They were asking where I was going, and I said Oregon, and they sound shocked because most, obviously, like you said, don't go to Oregon,
yeah,
Portland.
because if you're going to the United States for holiday or vacation, you're going to go to New York, you're going to go to Philadelphia, Washington D.C.,
Florida.
Florida, and maybe California, Las Vegas, maybe even Seattle, but you're not going to go to Portland, Oregon. Um,
Yeah,
and I think in a way that is was a very unique experience because when I went over to visit you, we only spent 2 days or 3 days in London, and the other
3 day. Yeah, I
times,
think
yeah,
three.
the other times we were spending in the smaller areas, and I think that's where the true beauty of traveling is you're seeing a country for what it really is rather than just going to the tourist sites. I remember we were standing right outside of the Winston Churchill War Rooms, the museum, waiting to go in, and there were these guys behind us, and they said, "I went to Stonehenge. I'm gonna be in London, and then I'm out." And I'm like,
It's
and you told me he's just visiting the tourist sites. He's not visiting, the
anything
UK for
else.
what it was. I remember of all the fish and chips I had over in England, the best one so far was at Hollingworth Lake. I remember we went there with towards
Harley and Caleb, I
yeah,
think.
Harley, Caleb, and Megan. Yeah, and we got fish and chips, and I loved it. Like we had fish and chips before in Manchester, but I just thought that that was the best one. And it's like who would go to Manchester? If you think of London, you're gonna England, you're gonna think of London, kind of thing. So those big tourist destinations. Manchester, not so much, but I'm glad I did visit there. And in a
Another,
way, when go ahead.
and I was going to say another good one would be to visit when you come over is Cornwall. It's got pristine, like beaches. It's like you're in another country. Like so many people go on holiday there.
hmm
It's literally amazing to visit.
Yeah. Um, and so if I might ask, just before we get back into you visiting Oregon, is based on what you saw in media, TV, entertainment, obviously probably developed some stereotypes about the U.S. Any ones that were proven wrong that you were shocked by when you came over?
I don't know. I'd say obviously this stereotype that Americans tend to be loud. That wasn't necessarily true. Well, from the Americans I've met, you're not loud. All your friends are not. They're very. I'd say one that is true. Do you like the idea with the Americans tend to be really nice? which is not a bad thing. You know, it's a good thing. But they're nicer than people over here, if that makes sense. Like over here, you won't get that. Like customer service. Like people won't go out of their way, to be nice to you.
Mhm.
It's just like, oh, I'm here to serve you, and that's it. Whereas in the US, I tend to find people were nice, which was good, but overly nice,
Mhm.
which from my from someone from the UK or maybe from other parts of Europe, which they find weird, might weird them out a little bit.
Mhm.
It's not like saying, oh, it's a bad thing that you're doing that, but it's just we're not used to it.
Yeah. I think I remember another one too. You probably may not remember this. When you came over, we went to Red Robin and to have a burger, and you asked me how much should I tip because
Oh
you've never
yeah,
tipped before.
yeah, that was one. Tipping, I to this day I still don't understand it, but yeah, it was just completely alien to me. I was like, well, how much do I tip? And I didn't understand it why it was a bad. Obviously now what you've told me why it was a bad thing if you didn't tip, but because we don't do it over here. When I came over, if you were say it was my first time over and you weren't there with me, I would have messed up really badly.
Yeah, because yeah, for me, that's what we've always done over here. And I remember when I went over there, you know, you didn't have to tip, and I felt really weird leaving the leaving the restaurant without having to put a
I mean,
tip on the table, some money on the table.
you
So
can if you want to, but they're not gonna be. What's the word I'm thinking of? They're not gonna be. They're like in a mood or say, or next time you come in, give you bad service or anything like that. It's not compulsory.
yeah, and it's not expected either to be tipped like that. So um, yeah, but coming back to when you visited Oregon, what were some things that you thought was cool or different or that you enjoyed when you came over here that you could not find in the UK, aside from Chipotle? And for those of you who don't know, Matt has a weird obsession for Chipotle after I took him to
But
Chipotle. So
we've only got it in London over here, haven't we?
we only went over there to yeah. When I came over to the UK, I was curious to see if they had any Chipotles because I didn't think that Mexican food was going to be present in the UK. But there was a Chipotle in London. Wasn't as good as the stateside Chipotles, but it was okay.
It's
Um,
still nice.
yeah. But what were some
It
things that you found about Oregon or just about America that you thought was cool, or
well,
that shocked you, aside
well,
from what we've covered?
the first thing when I got off the flight, I think I remember telling you this was, you remember we were in the car with your dad, we were driving back to your house, and I saw the buses. Literally, this was the first thing that I thought, this is really cool. Do you know where the exhaust is? It's on the top, isn't it?
Hmm.
I thought that's just completely blown my mind because no, obviously over here we have it at the bottom and you guys had it at the top. And I was asking you, why is that at the top of the bus? Do you know, not at the bottom? Because I've never seen that anywhere else in the world like that. Anywhere I've ever been, at the top of the bus.
Yeah.
It was really cool. But another thing was shooting. I like how you can just go shooting whenever you want in the US.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I felt that I remember when I came over to the UK and a lot of your friends, I asked them if you came to the US, what was the first thing you wanted to do? And everyone said I want to go shooting. At least all the boys did. Um, yeah, we went shooting and though you've had experience with firearms before, so thankfully, you've already had some previous experience when you were in the Air Cadets. Um, but yeah,
These guns were completely different,
what was that?
I'd say. These guns were completely different, I'd say. They were I'd say much more powerful.
What did they give you paintball guns and BB guns to shoot in the Air Cadets or what?
I can't remember what it was now, but I'll have to have a search and see what it was. But nothing like what your uncle had. But your uncle's guns, oh, they were so much fun.
Yeah, we had AR-15s and Glock pistols, and we started you when you first started shooting our pistols, we started you on on a Ruger. It looks like a German Walther, um, Luger. So it's less recoil, it's more for teaching and yeah. But yeah, that was a fun day. We spent a good deal outside and went to the shooting range and
Then we
uh,
didn't we go to eat after? We spent the whole day there, didn't we? Because then we went to eat afterwards.
yes, yeah. But
Uh,
I just remember how excited you were, and it was kind of funny the day before we went paintballing. So in a way, you upgraded from a paintball gun to an actual rifle.
Still going.
Yeah. Sitting there loading your own bullets, learning how to breathe, learning how to, safety. So yeah, I think yeah, to me, I
It,
think if anything, that was the most American thing that you did because I feel that when the world looks at America, they think everyone has guns, which is not necessarily true, but you know, we do have the liberty of having firearms and it's not being outlawed. So, um, which I thought was kind of
it,
interesting.
it was absolutely great. I think I missed every single shot, but I still loved it. I'm
No,
still
if you probably hit targets out there, you could hit the white side of a bar. No, give yourself more credit than that. But yeah, I think though, correct me if I'm wrong. Which did you like better, the pistol shooting or the rifle shooting?
I don't know. I think I enjoyed the pistol shooting more
Yeah,
for some reason. I enjoyed the handguns a lot more. I really did because I feel like I could aim better, obviously, because it wasn't as heavy, and I don't know. I feel like you could just aim better with it.
yeah,
It was
eh,
easier because you could see you actually hitting something, whereas with the other ones, it was more of a distance. So I was like, I don't know if I've hit that.
yeah. You won't really know until you've either gone out or if you're shooting at steel targets. You can hear the ping that you've hit something. So,
Yeah.
um,
So that was really good. It
yeah.
was. Then we didn't we go Mount Hood as well?
Yeah, we went up to Mount Hood, and that's the one thing that I think separated Oregon from at least going to the UK was there were mountains and hills to hike versus over in England, I think it was a little bit more flat with a few areas like Holcomb Hill and things like that. But
Yeah, there's
um,
not many, what could you say, hilly areas or mountainy areas in England. It's like you said, it's flat,
yeah,
and unless you go Scotland, I feel like the further north you go in Scotland, the more mountainy it gets.
yeah, yeah. Versus over here in Oregon, you have a little bit of everything. And what I liked about Portland the most, and I'm not sure if you realize now, is that if you want to go to the coast, you're 1-2 hours away, from the beach. If you want to go to the mountains, you're 1 to 2 hours away driving east to Mount Hood. Um, so yeah, I thought, yeah, and obviously we also went to Vegas because we had to do something, outside of Oregon as well. And um,
It, we
but
went what it was in October, so it wasn't like the hottest as well, which was good.
yeah, it wasn't hot either. And I remember we were walking on the Vegas Strip, and I think I couldn't tell what the guy was, but he spoke with either an Australian or a derivative of a British accent, and he said, "I can't believe we're in the desert. This is the
Desert,
desert."
yeah.
And I'm like, "Where do you expect Vegas was
It's
located?"
like it's like, did you not see when you flew in? Like all around you.
Yeah, we're in the
Uh,
desert,
that was
and
no. I think the weirdest thing in Vegas was the road markings. Remember, it was metal, wasn't it? Like metal little shards on the ground because they couldn't have it painted on.
yeah, because if it was painted on, it would eventually melt or
Melt
or
away, wouldn't it?
yeah, then also you have smears all over the road, and then which lanes is which, right? So
That would take some skill.
yeah,
Saying
yeah,
that, going on to another area, I'd say with driving. Your guys driving, you can drive a lot earlier.
yeah. We can drive when well people can high school students when they're 15. Usually the first thing that they do when they turn 15 is go get their driver's permit, and that's where you take a computer test and you get your permit to drive. You don't have a license yet. You just need to have someone who has a license in your car with you when you drive. And then by the time you're 16, that's when you can take the driving test and become certified to drive on your own. Versus over there in the UK, when do you guys start driving?
If I'm still correct, 17 towards the end of, yeah, 17. I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
Which
What about the drinking age? I remember that's something that we talked about as well. Drinking age over here is 21.
it's 18 over here, but not. This sounds bad to say, but most tend to start. Obviously, me and you don't drink, but most people over here tend to start drinking when they're like 16.
Yeah.
So even when they turn 18, it's not normally like a big deal for them.
Hmm.
So it's just like a normal thing. That's why over here, I feel like the difference is in universities, you have people drinking all the time, and it's not a big thing. Obviously, it must be different for you guys at university.
Oh yeah, over the university, drinking is part of the culture. I mean, you have 18, 19, 20-year-old kids drinking. even though the age is 21, and if they can get away with it, fine. But if they get caught, they get charged with what's called a minor in possession, and they have to
Oh,
attend classes on,
really?
yeah, about not possessing those types of things until they're of the appropriate age. I mean, even I'll even hear conversations of people having fake IDs, just so they
Well, that's
can, yeah, just so they can go buy alcohol. Um,
only in the movies, that.
no, it's a few people do have fake IDs. At least I know of at least four people I've overheard in conversations when I was in college that had fake IDs. I did not, I wasn't friends with them or anything, but I just overheard that. I'm like, wow, like, um, I even had one of my roommates. I roomed with a random roommate my third year in college, and he was younger than me, and I was 21 already. But he asked me to go buy him some alcohol, and I said I am not doing that. Um, you ever see that show called "What Would You Do," where they have
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah,
yeah,
I've seen
and
it.
I,
Yeah,
I felt that
it's one
when
of
he asked
those.
me that, I was like, "Is there any cameras in here?" Because honestly, this is what I would do, which is say no. But I just want to make sure that if there is a camera, that I'm being recorded for it. So, because for me, I don't want to be the one caught in the middle of that. So, if you
Exactly.
if you want
No,
to go buy alcohol, so be it. But I'm not gonna buy alcohol on your
yeah,
behalf.
I'm not doing it for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like if a 10-year-old kid walks up to you and he asks you, "Hey, could you light this cigarette for me?" What would you do? So,
I'll be
um,
like, nope.
yeah, I have some ethical concerns with that, so I'm gonna say no. um,
That that's what well you tend to find over here. Like you never. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but over here people who live on campus or like in private accommodation for universities, they'll still invite people around to drink, but it never gets. I've never seen it get completely out of control, out of hand.
uh,
Like, yeah, they'll get drunk, but not to the stage where the police will need calling.
oh, over here there's parties and there's loud music and sometimes there's drinking games and yeah, at times there will be, scary things that will happen and people will drink till they puke and things like that. Yeah, so it is part of the culture, especially if you're in the fraternity or a sorority. I know that there's a bit of an alcohol culture there. I was never in one, so I can't really speak to that. But based on some of my friends that did tell me that were part of fraternities, they said that drinking is a big part of that culture in that environment. So, um, yeah,
I,
which I,
g-
go ahead.
I guess it's because it's something that's outlawed, so it's something that's seen as dangerous, I'm guessing. So it
Yeah,
seems like it's risky. That's the only reason I can think it'd be seen as a big thing.
yeah. Well, I guess now going off, still on the topic of guns, somewhat. Um, I remember just a couple weeks ago, actually, when we were talking, and because you left your job at Tesco, which is basically the equivalent of a Walmart over here, and you have a master's degree. What's your master's degree in?
Terrorism and security.
Yep, terrorism and security, and you're actually you're going to be working for the police here soon. I remember I asked you, uh, when are you going to get firearms training? And I realized you were in the UK and police don't carry firearms like they do over here.
Anyway,
So, uh, but I thought it was just really, really funny. I'm like, well, you do have some experience with firearms now. You've come over here, you've shot a pistol, you kind of know how it works, right? So, but then I realized you're in the UK. You guys don't have firearms.
firearms.
Is firearms outlawed at all levels? Like maybe at most the military can carry it, but no one else can carry it, right?
Well, not all levels. You allowed it for, I'm pretty sure I'm correct, hunting. You allowed hunting rifles, doing things like that. So people who go on hunts, I think that's at most. You can still go to shooting ranges, but I don't know if you're allowed, your own guns.
Mm-hmm.
Because I doubt it. Because I think in the late '90s, most of them were all banned. But no, it's not just the military. Obviously, you'll still have some police that carry guns and that are armed,
Mm-hmm.
but they're far and few between.
I
Like,
I do remember when we went to that street where the prime minister lived. At the time, it was not Boris Johnson. Who was it before?
when was it? 2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Oh, I think it was Theresa May.
Yeah, Theresa May. We stopped in London and near her residence, and there was armed guards around her house. So
Police,
yeah, armed
yeah.
police. So that was the only time I ever saw a firearm in the UK was at that moment. Um.
I
So
think. I think the only difference is in certain remember I was telling you a while back, say police respond to an incident
Hmm.
and let's say that person's armed or you realize they're armed and armed police are needed, they'll be called in.
Hmm.
So you can't necessarily do anything about it.
Right. Out of curiosity, how did that those firearms become banned to begin with? What instigated that law?
Uh, if I'm correct, it was in the my mum was telling me about it. I don't think I might have been just born, so I think I was one or younger. There was a shooting in Scotland called the Dunblane massacre in a high school, if I'm correct. And it prompted after that all firearms to be banned.
Hmm.
It just realized if something like that can happen, we don't really need them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember we went to go pick up Idris at school. Idris is your second youngest brother. Noah's the youngest, but Idris, and there was green gates surrounding the school,
All around
and
the
we
school,
couldn't get
yeah.
into it. And I remember I asked you why, and you said it was for security reasons. And I was like, wow, like we didn't have any of that in my high school. And I remember when you came over, I took you to my old high school.
High
We
school,
just
and yeah, there
waltzed
were
right in, like.
the gates were open, weren't they?
There were no gates, and
Yeah, you could easily walk in. That's what sort of shocked me. Like over here, every school has gates around it. Like my old high school. To be honest, when I started my high school, there were gates, but there were still gaps you could get in and out.
Mhm, mhm.
But now it's just completely gated off. You can't get in or out at all.
Yeah. I also remember after the sidewalk massacre incident where a car drove through the sidewalk and killed a lot of people over, I think it was in London, I think it was. Every sidewalk then had cinder blocks to prevent a car from driving through
Yeah,
that ever again. Like it was like instant, like that change was put into effect,
yeah.
which I
So
thought was kind of interesting.
it's a shame they have to be there, but I understand why they are
Yeah.
because I don't think they were there obviously a couple of years ago, but they put them up straight away.
Hmm.
Straight up. I think London isn't the only place they have them as well.
Yeah, I think I saw some in Manchester too. We didn't really spend too much time in downtown Manchester, so I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure if you can speak to that either, but
It's been a
yeah,
while since I've been in Manchester. I think they do, to
yeah.
be honest with you.
It's been a while since anyone's been anywhere because of COVID.
COVID,
So,
yeah, it's been a
um,
bit of a nightmare.
yeah. But yeah, I think that kind of summarizes the how far this relationship has gotten as far as from just two random people on Xbox Live meeting to actually talking to each other,
See,
then meeting each other. I think it's a
see,
pretty unique journey so far. And
I'm
uh,
I'm surprised that we still talk though after that first Xbox Live conversation because most people tend to play one game and then that's it. They just don't talk again or do not leave it afterwards.
yeah, I do see I do know that feeling because there have been people that randomly I would play with on Xbox Live that are really good, but the relationship and the friendship never progresses beyond that. Very rarely does it become, hey, let's Skype, hey, let's FaceTime, hey, let's meet each other. I only had that invitation from one other friend who lives in Colorado, but he invited me over to his wedding when COVID was happening, so I could not go. But yeah,
Remember one, yeah.
it's very weird to see how relationships can be formed online and be maintained like that. But back
It's
then, the closest thing that my teachers, at least that know of you and I, especially my history teacher, he said is pen pals. That was the closest thing that you can get to something like this.
it's
So
just the new norm now though, isn't it? It's
yeah,
like it's not exactly social media what when the way we met, but it's just the new way. You don't get me wrong, it's not the safest way of meeting people, is it?
not
Exactly, but
not the safest way of meeting someone at
yeah,
all. Yeah, because you don't know who you're
but
speaking to. So
that's why at first I don't know about you. I was obviously there's a difference between playing with someone on the Xbox, but then there's a difference when we're talking to them afterwards and skyping them. If that makes
I
sense.
remember I forgot who extended the invitation out to who first for that first Skype call, but
It was you. It was you.
I think it was me. Yeah, it's like, hey, let's Skype. Let's talk. And I
Uh,
remember Dean was over at your house, and you were all
yeah, I
playing
remember
Battlefield
that
3.
perfectly.
Yeah, and you guys were, you guys were a little bit
Oh,
tense, but I think it kind of lightened up the mood again when we played again. But it's like, hey, that was kind of cool. We Skyped kind of thing. So
Put the camera. I remember that because I just tried to put the camera on Dean. And Dean was like, "What are you doing?" It was funny that it really was.
yeah, but
But
yeah, well, man, back then those Skypes sucked. Back then, like you had to pay for group conversations, and then it became you had to pay for group video, and then now you can have a group video whenever you want. But
you can
back
you can
then,
do
man,
you can do it for
and
free.
we had to find other ways to use that when Skype was just not working. Like remember we used Viber
Fiber.
at one
Oh
point,
god, it
which
was
was
terrible.
horrible.
It would disconnect all the time.
Yeah,
All the time was now WhatsApp and other things. Obviously, they stay connected, which is great.
you know what I find
Absolutely.
funny is that technology back then too did not really was never meant for things like that. Like we did our best with what we had, but
Yeah, it
now
wasn't
people
meant
can
for.
yeah, now people can just call each other on FaceTime from across the world or Skype each other or Zoom. But back then we are like, how can we do this? Because you lived in another country. If I were to text you or call you on my phone, we would get international fees. So
I know that. Oh my god, it's. I guess I don't know. It's kind of cool how it's changed. Like, was 4G even around 10 years ago? It was, wasn't it?
it
10 years
was.
ago.
If yeah, 4G came out. The iPhone 3G I think was sometime in 2010, 2009, or sometime around there. I forget when the iPhone 3G came out. I think that was the second iPhone that came out actually. So, yeah, so 4G came out, I think during the era of the iPhone 4S or the 5. So, yeah, it was around there.
Well, hopefully, with with all this COVID pandemic being over, and you come over again, you'll get to see more of the UK and just get a different opinion rather than just the areas you've seen.
Yeah, because the unfortunate thing is when I went over there, we only saw England. Never went anywhere to Wales
Scott,
or Northern Ireland or Scotland. Um, so yeah, it'll be every. But in a way, I feel like I kind of missed out a little bit because it might be a little bit harder to travel big now, at least over there, especially after the whole Brexit thing. And maybe perhaps you said Scotland, perhaps leaving the UK, but that will be a topic for a later video. Um, but yeah, I just found that that was because I remember you used to tell me you could literally, if you wanted to, book a plane ticket to France, travel to Italy, and not have to worry about any visas or anything like
so
that
I could,
because it
I
was
could,
part of the
I could
EU.
could just set up a new life. I could just stay there for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I could have just done that. But
Yeah,
no, well,
but now
we'll
you
still be
can't.
able to
So
visit Europe. Um, we can still travel to it. It's like, ideally, I want to see Spain. Spain's top, not for the sun, but like all the sights.
I've always wanted to go to Switzerland and Italy, and it's like because I have family in France, and I remember actually the first year that you and I started talking, you invited me to play one a Halo Wars game with you because you were trying to do a 3v3,
Yeah, we don't have
and
another
you didn't
player.
have enough you didn't have another player. And you messaged me, and I said I'm going to France
Uh,
in a couple days, so I can't play with you. I'm sorry.
I
So
think I know. I remember. I think when you came back and Dean was saying we need another player, and I was like, "Well, there's this guy I've added." I said, and Dean was like, "Well, invite him. See if he'll want to play." So I thought, "Hey, screw it. May as well invite him. There's no harm in trying." And you joined. I remember that perfectly.
yeah.
If you didn't join, I don't think we'd be talking now.
Well, I don't think we would be talking now had you just not invited me to the Xbox Live party to begin with. Once again, just by happenstance, just by chance, we were put into a game together. We started
That was
talking, and
it was good you did because that kept me busy all summer. I had Because remember, I was telling you that was my first summer off because I'd finished high school, and it felt weird never having to go back. Obviously, I was starting college in the September, but it just felt weird that I had so much free time to myself,
yeah,
not having to do anything.
yeah, um,
So Xbox was all.
yeah. And I still sometimes, and what's interesting now too is I'm still learning a lot of your slang. Like I remember when I came over, um, you guys were talking about uh, oh, I need a quid, and I'm like, I thought you guys use pounds. What's a quid? You know, and they're like it's like the equivalent of you saying a buck, you know, versus a dollar, like $10, 10 quid, you know, so,
I've,
or or
I've
e- or even Harley saying that's mint instead of saying that's cool. I was like,
it's talking about money. When I looked at your guys, so obviously you got all the notes. I looked at the change, I was like, I have no idea what any of this is. When I when I got the change, I'm like, I don't know what any of this is. It's I think I've still got a $5 somewhere. I've kept it, just as a souvenir.
I still kept all of my British pound notes
How
as
many
a
have you still
souvenir.
got?
Hang on. I have the 20 pound note that you guys discontinued. And then I have the laminated plastic ones. Uh,
Fives.
I have a 5 and I have a 10.
Oh, you
Um,
can still use the five then when you come over.
what about the 10?
Is it laminated?
Yes, it's laminated. It's plastic.
Yeah, you'll be able to use that. It's just the
Okay.
20,
It's just 20, which is paper, which you can't use.
which is sort of a shame. But do what your uncle does. He collects money, do like form around the world, do like a little bags.
Yeah, my uncle he collects money and he puts them in a little bag and he puts them into like a little treasure chest as a souvenir box. So and he'll put it in like a little envelope to saying like, oh, this was, Italian currency or this was, Japanese currency. So if you're in the EU, you could travel to like what? How many countries in the EU and still only use the euro? So
Pretty sure it's 27. I think Denmark's the exception now. But it's cool how your uncle has done that because obviously, when was he stationed in England?
I
Was it
don't
like
remember. Sometime
20,
in the
30 years
80s.
ago?
Sometime in the
Yeah,
80s. Yeah.
that's when each country had its own currency. But so he's still got all that currency, whereas now it's just all the euro,
Yeah.
which is really cool. So it's just souvenirs to look at later in life, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Which is amazing. I like the idea of that.
Alrighty, man. Well, it was great catching up with you. We should definitely do this again in a future video. But yeah, it was fun. Nice talking to you. I'll give
Definitely.
you the last word. Anything you want to say?
No, it's enjoyable talking about this, just the differences and what you thought.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well then, man. Next time. See ya.
Definitely.